Y'all ready for this? I hope so. All right, let's get this party started. I don't have time to mess around. Welcome again to Sisseton Wahpeton College discussion of this is my little mini lecture on what I call out Indianing the Indians. What the heck is this? What is this? What's going on? It says here I'm saving these for my mini lecture on out Indian. You may turn into a please reply later. So keep your wits about you. As soon as I'm done with this lecture, I'm going to turn this into the please reply, but I'll put a question and I want you to apply. Pretty much everybody in this class has seen, my voice is going nuts, has seen this movie. It is called Avatar. If I remember right, it came out in the year 2009, and you already know the plot. It's this dude who's a military veteran. Sounds familiar. And of course, he's got to be white. And he's run off to join, to colonize another world. And he becomes the biggest, baddest native of them all, even though that's why I put it here. Here's Dancing with Wolves. We natives, we call this movie Dancing with Smurfs because it's the same plot. Some white dude joins the Indians, gets good at being an Indian, and gets better at being the Indians, and eventually takes over. Let me focus. All right, so like I said before, this is something that we need to look at. We need to scrutinize in greater detail. Way back when I was in graduate school at, yes, USD, University of South Dakota in Vermilion, I wrote a paper about this because it ground on me so bad. I called it Out Indianing the Indians. I can't believe it's still here. Look at this. This is a paper I wrote, a huge paper, nearly two. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I just wanted to show you that, yes, I save all my papers, which you should also do as well. Only 22 pages. And looking back on this now, what, 40 years later, and going, gee whiz, I was such a weird kid. Um, Such a nerd. And look at all this research I did. But never mind, we got to focus. I'm going to move this out of the way. And we're going to go back to what we're talking about. I wrote this paper and I bemoaned this non native tendency to want to consume native cultures, to commodify them, and to go native on the part of the outsider, the colonizer, right? Well, again, let's look at Avatar for an example. Non native guy enters into native culture, befriends the tribe, becomes part of the tribe, struggles to fit in, learns their ways, becomes better than the natives themselves at being native, and eventually even turns out to lead them. Well, this is a thing. It shows up again and again. Like I said, it shows up in Dances with Wolves. But in our case of Avatar, Jake Sully, the non Navi human warrior, he achieves the impossible by taking control of a Toruk as opposed to a smaller Ikran, which we looked at a second ago. I gotta go faster because I'm spinning my wheels up here. Eventually leads the tribe to victory against the invading humans. Again, like I said before, this is a recurring theme in literature, and I wanted to present it to you, my beloved native literature students, as part of my segment on cultural appropriation. Okay, so when I asked AI about it, my question was simple. Is there an actual term for this? I call it out Indianing the Indians. What's the actual term for this phenomenon? Going local? Going native? What is it? AI says, well, yeah, there it really is a term for it. You call it out Indianing the Indians, but there was a fella, an anthropologist, of course, named Renato Rosaldo. He called it imperialist nostalgia. He coined that term. It's a pattern where outsiders mourn the loss of indigenous cultures, romanticize them, and then try to inhabit or outperform them, even though the outsider's own society helped destroy the cultures in the first place. Right? So there we go. That's what's going on. The second term, which also comes from anthropology, doesn't sound as scholarly, of course, but is still a term. It's a thing. It's called going native. Again, this is where the outsider A adopts the dress customs of a worldview of a native group, B claims insider status, and C often tries to be more native than the natives. A lot of you guys probably love this movie from 2003, Kill Bill. What's going on? Why did I put this here? Let's blow this up. Let me see if it'll work. Aha, like that. Kill Bill. Now, for me, this was a horror movie. I mean, it was cool. You know, it had all the cool action and hits chopping off, but because I really love I forgot what her English name is, Leo. Lucy Leo. I was annoyed by that because I liked Lucy. Never mind, focus. But what really also annoyed me was the fact that here these kids have been studying martial arts and swordsmanship in Japan all their lives. They've mastered it, and then some blonde babe comes along who's been in a coma and probably doesn't know her butt from her head still, and she defeats all of them, and they're all together. But never mind, I'm going to go back to the subject at hand, you see, because I'm going to stand up here and spin my wheels some more. Again, this is part of imperialist nostalgia and going native. The third one, which I alluded to earlier, we go back to Dances with Wolves for a second, is called the white savior narrative. This is a literary trope where a non native, often white, A enters an indigenous or marginalized community. B learns their ways. C becomes better at the culture than the hosts. And D ultimately saves them. You can see this brilliantly dramatized in Avatar, Dances with Wolves, The Last Samurai, and even The Last of the Mohicans and Fern Gully. Or, yeah, you can see it in Aunt Bully too, Aunt Bully, and Fern Gully. This, again, is an ongoing trope. What's going on? Well, the fourth term we have to look at is probably the most academic that we'll use. It's called ethnographic refusal or ethnographic desire. Ooh, I like ooh la la. I like that. Again, this is used to describe an outsider's desire to access, consume, or inhabit indigenous knowledge, often without accountability or belonging. It's the I want your culture, but not your history or your struggle dynamic. Keep in mind, if we were to scrutinize this phenomenon through a psychoanthropological lens, we can say it's related to something which I mentioned in a previous lecture before. I called settler alienation syndrome. Here we have our settler colonizer. He somehow shrinks down to the size of the fairies and he joins them. The same with the ant bully. He gets shrunk down. He was originally fighting and bullying the ants, and he got shrunk down, and he joins the ants, and he becomes their leader. We're seeing it again, even in the old Tarzan. This is from 1999 cartoon, but it dates all the way back to 1912. Even this one. You guys know this story about the little boy where the wild things are, 1963. Little boy gets sent to bed without any supper because he's being naughty, and suddenly his bedroom transforms into a forest and there's a sailboat. He sails off. He goes and joins all these other wild things, wild creatures, monsters, whatever you want to call them. Suddenly he becomes their king. It's the same thing over and over and over again. What else can we say about this? Like I said before, if we are going to scrutinize this through a psychoanthropological lens, we can say it's related to settler alienation syndrome, otherwise known as the Garrison mentality. It builds upon it, though. This is where colonizers view the natural world as a hostile wilderness. But we're going to expand upon the spiritual alienation, the spiritual dislocation that colonizers experience when they invade indigenous homelands. So, in this related phenomenon that I am lamenting here and that I lamented way back in the 2000s at the University of South Dakota, I even lampooned it. Intimidated by the exotic alien qualities of this place? Not to worry, old chap. Simply extract knowledge from these local savages, and pretty soon, by vulture, well, pretty much vulture, by virtue of your superior English blood, you'll be beating them at their own game. Look, even a child can do it. That's the book called Kim, or the other one called Passage to India. Behold the sorry, sorry state of affairs in India today. This is India now, because they did it in India as well. You know that. History, look it up, how the British took over India. That's why the folks in India speak with that cool, clipped Hindi British accent. But never mind, keep going. Pity that our attempt to fully civilize them has failed. If only we could get the Indians to be more like us stoic Brits. If only we could return them to their former classic glory, where they would learn to set aside their rational, emotional behavior and strive for higher things. Perhaps then we could relate to them better. How about the Heart of Darkness? Traveler, beware! The land you are about to enter is alive. From its howling savages to its putrid black waters, it sees with an omnipresent, malevolent force. This force has been known to completely engulf and corrupt unsuspecting Europeans, regardless of natural inbred goodness. And there is no cure. Enter at your own risk. So that's me goofing off and lampooning this mentality way back in, man, was I my early 30s? I don't know. But let's focus, shall we? All right. So keep in mind, also, I'm going to stick with what I call out Indianing the Indians because I like it better. That term, that is. We've got settler alienation syndrome is what I also a term I coined, but these other ones, which is imperialist nostalgia, going native, the white savior narrative, ethnographic refusal, or ethnographic desire, they don't fully grasp the whole concept the way I would like to. So let's describe what it means. To put it another way, out Indianing the Indians refers to a settler behavior in which a non native person enters into indigenous space, adopts indigenous practices or identities, then claims to embody them and more authentically than the indigenous peoples themselves. And it grows out of patterns like imperialist nostalgia, going native, the white savior narrative, ethnographic desire, and ethnographic refusal. In each case, the outsider tries to fill the cultural emptiness created by settler alienation syndrome by performing indigeneity. That's the word I was looking for, often with more confidence, more authority, and more entitlement than actual native communities. So let's keep going. It's a moment when the colonizer, initially unsettled by the so called howling savages and howling wilderness, decides not only to tame it, but to master the culture once feared or dismissed. The result is a performance of indigeneity that centers the outsider, sidelines native voices. You can look at that picture, centers the outsider, sidelines the native voices, and replaces cultural knowledge with imitation, fantasy, or self appointed expertise. Boom! I mean, how much more can, well, let's look at it some more. Uh, Again, we already got, no, I'm not going to, already defined that. Um, we talked about, oh, this boy's name is John Dunbar, by the way. Just looking at some synopses of the movie, it says here John Dunbar arrives as an outsider, learns Lakota ways, becomes a better warrior and hunter than many Lakota men, and ultimately becomes the tribe's moral center and protector. The function, it reinforces the idea that indigenous cultures need an outsider to validate or preserve them. How about Avatar? Let's go back to that. There's Jake Sully. And Jake Sully, this one, he becomes a Navi, masters their most sacred practices, tames the Torok, the red one, not the blue one. Something no Navi has done in generations, and leads them to victory. What is the function of this? Well, the outsider becomes the ultimate insider. It's a fantasy transcending settler guilt by becoming native. Then we go back to James Fenimore Cooper, because you got to remember this book or this movie started off as a book. Natty Bumppo. Hawkeye is the quintessential white frontiersman who is more Indian than the Indians. He outshoots, outtracks, and outmorals everyone. Function? Early American literature invents a white hero who inherits indigenous skills without indigenous history, trauma, or accountability. Kill Bill. Let's go back to her. Beatrix Kiddo. I forgot that was what her name was. Trains in martial arts that she did not grow up in, like I said before, surpasses lifelong practitioners and becomes the deadliest warrior in history, defeating Lucy Liu in the process, which really irritated me. Never mind. Function. A non Asian outsider becomes the pinnacle of an Asian warrior tradition. The same narrative transplanted, the pattern transplanted into different cultural setting. Again and again and again, we see this in Dancing with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, Avatar, Kill Bill, The Last Samurai, Ant Bully, Fern Gully, and even Where the Wild Things Are, just to name a few. There we go. He's the king. Now, why does this narrative keep reappearing? That's what I was getting at before. It solves a settler colonial anxiety. I want the beauty of your culture without the burden of your history. I want your belonging without your struggle. I want to be the hero of your story. It's a fantasy again of cultural inheritance without cultural responsibility. Why does this even matter in native literature class? Well, we got some answers. First of all, it distorts indigenous realities. It recenters things on whiteness and centers whiteness into indigenous stories. It erases indigenous agency. It romanticizes colonialism and teaches audience to see indigenous cultures as something to be entered, mastered, and redeemed by outsiders. Got it? Hope I'm not being too loud. All right, let me keep going. What else do we need to know about our students? We need to know this. We need to recognize this pattern so we can contrast it with real RLI, as my late buddy or mentor Lee Francis used to say. Um, Being RLI, you want to contrast that with RLI, indigenous authored stories. Indigenous sovereignty over narrative, indigenous definitions of heroism, belonging, and identity. So let's wrap it up. The white savior narrative isn't really about saving indigenous people, it's about saving the settler imagination as they are aliens in a world that they cannot come fully belong to. And with that, I believe I've already spoken for 25 minutes. Ooh, man, thank you so much for your kind attention to this matter. We're going to knock it off there, and I wish you an awesome rest of the week. Talk to you later. Bye bye. Stop, 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 stop.